Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fit Chicks Chat. My name is Amanda Quinn,
And my name's Laura Jackson.
and today on Fit Chicks Chat, we are talking about the secret to coaching with confidence and why having knowledge is your superpower. I'm excited to talk about this because I think this is the biggest barrier. It's the biggest thing. It's the thing that holds so many people back, new coaches, experienced coaches, aspiring coaches from actually getting started. I think it's confidence. And
1000%.
yeah.
I mean, sorry, I was just gonna say,
No, no, please go ahead.
I feel like this is something that, you know, and I know even for me, when I first started hearing about someone talking about confidence or things like I was just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Tell me the how. I just want to know the strategy. I want to know what I need to do. And then when I really understood like how much confidence plays into your success, whether it be with coaching, building your business, showing up the way you like it's everything. Because if you don't have confidence, you are not going to do the things that are required to get the results that you want.
Mhm. Completely. And it's so hard to step into that leadership role. So we're going to talk about this today. Now, of course, this is leading up to, and I think this is a really cool kind of lead in because we have our holistic nutrition, um, oh my God, Coach Week. Sorry, my brain was like, oh. We have our Holistic Nutrition Coach Week that is starting. It is January 28th to the 30th. If you are someone right now who's listening who's like, yeah, I need that confidence, I need more knowledge, I need more skills, I need all of those things to help me step into being the coach that my clients need me to be, you got to join us. It's a free ticket. You can check it out at fitchicksacademy.com/coach week to grab your free ticket now. But in that challenge, we're going to be, excuse me, in the coach week, we're going to be talking all about is it day 3? That we're going to be talking all about like the mindset and the coaching side and the confidence side. But everything that you learn over that period of time is going to be the knowledge that's going to give you the skills and the confidence to be able to step in as a leader. Because that's really what it comes down to. When we don't feel like we have the skills, when we don't feel like we have the knowledge, when we don't feel like we have the right skills, it's really hard to feel confident. It's really hard to step in and go, yeah, I can lead you on this journey. Right. And so, why confidence really matters and why this episode is so like such a huge, passionate thing for me and for Laura is that confidence matters because clients look to you as a trusted guide. So when somebody hires you, when somebody is considering hiring you, when somebody is looking at you and saying, I think they have exactly what I need, it's because they trust you, but you have to have the confidence to step in and go, actually, you're right. I am the person you need. I do have everything that you need. And a lack of confidence can actually lead to hesitation, which can impact your client's outcome. So hesitation meaning they might be like, hey, I think that you are the coach that I want to hire. And then you might hesitate and be like, well, tell me a little more, maybe, you know what I mean? And then you're
Yeah.
kind of like skirting around, or you're like, I might be able to, or maybe I can recommend a book for you or a core, you know what I mean? And you're kind of like giving them, or you're like, well, this is what I did for my own journey, but I don't know if it'll work for you. And then you get really like nervous because you're like, I don't feel confident with the outcome. I don't feel confident delivering the outcome that they desire. That's the biggest thing. And so many times we'll just hesitate or we'll give different like here's route B or C and all these different options as opposed to just stepping in and going, actually I can. Laura, I have a question for you like as a coach. When was the first time, because I know like when we started our company, we also had that lack of confidence. Like I remember being like trying to emulate you teaching classes. I was like, I didn't know my own voice. I didn't know how to show up
And
as
I
a
was
coach.
trying to emulate Jillian
So
Michaels. So
I
then it
know.
was
So
extra
it's like
weird.
everything was weird about it. And like when we think about confidence, I remember showing up to class and I'd be like, "Oh, I hope I say the right things. I hope I show up. I hope I'm not too nervous. Like I sweat a lot when I work out, like all these kinds of things, like all of this stuff, right? Running through my mind and thinking like, "Oh my gosh, why would they ever hire me? I don't have a six pack. I don't do this. What if I suck at this? What if I'm doing this?" And then there was a moment that it just like flipped. And for me, it was really when we were teaching our boot camp classes, and this is just like a fitness class style, but when we were teaching our boot camp classes, and I remember it was like when all my clients were like, "Hey, can you develop like an annual membership? Can like I don't want to stop coming. And I started seeing the same faces month after month after month after month. My classes were sold out and it was just like this feeling of like, wait a second, I totally not only do I know what I'm doing, but like they trust me so much that they're willing to like, you know, stick with me for the long term. And on top of that, I can see the results that they're getting. And that was like a really big thing. That was like a huge flip for me was like, oh my gosh, like seeing how much they were shifting and recognizing that it had nothing to do with my own journey and it was really about me being a coach for them. So what would you say, like, do you have a moment where it like really flipped for you, especially from like a nutrition standpoint and coaching people in that area?
Well, this is the thing, and I actually was just working on my stuff for Coach Week,
Yeah,
and there's a whole section where I'm talking about, like what confidence really is. And it's funny because so many times we think either people are just confident or we build confidence after we've created a result, right? Like there's
right.
this idea of either like you're just naturally confident because you think confident thoughts, or you become confident because you've produced results that prove to you that you are right. But the problem is with that too, is that, and this was me, I always based my confidence on other people's opinions, right? So again, when like you were saying, like people signing up for my classes and things like that, yes, that created evidence that I could do this and I was doing it successfully. But the hardest part is to be able to feel confident even without, you know, any of that evidence, like,
Mhm.
or if somebody says something negative, which I see with a lot of coaches, like somebody will say something negative on their social media post, and suddenly they'll start to question everything about what they're doing, even though they have like, hundreds of people saying positive things. That one person who's saying something negative, they're like, oh, it totally shakes their confidence. And the other
Right.
thing too is being able to create the confidence before you have any evidence, which is where a lot of new coaches are at, right? It's that idea of like, how do you believe it if you haven't seen it yet?
Hmm.
And that's where, too, for me, it was like when I look back at our journey, we believed that what we were going to do was going to be amazing before it actually was proven to be amazing, which helped us have the
True.
confidence to show up for it. Right. But I also, for me, too, it was like I felt like, too, with like, as we were building our business, I had to set up things around me to make sure that I was showing up even when I didn't feel confident. So it's like
Right.
that's why too, as we're talking about this in Coach Week, I find it a really interesting topic because it's kind of you've got to train your brain to believe it before you do. And then you also have to set yourself up in a situation around people who are not going to let you stop when you do feel unconfident because it will happen. And like
Hmm.
that's where I think the conversation always gets really interesting because, and which is why, in certification, I always say you're on a personal journey just as much as you are a professional because you're building your belief system and your abilities. You're building up your confidence over the 8 weeks because you're practicing coaching. You're seeing results for clients. You're seeing results in your own life because you're doing what you like, you know, testing things on yourself. And then that creates the evidence that then confirms that you can do this. So it's like, I just always find this conversation is just like it's so because it's so hard, right? And it will sabotage you from going after your goals. It will sabotage you from becoming a coach. It will sabotage you from trying to grow your business if you don't understand all the ways that confidence, like how confidence works, all the ways it shows up and all the ways it can be shaken very easily. And then have the right support system, which is why I'm always like, don't try to do this on your own. Be surrounded by other people who can hold the belief for you while you can't hold the belief for yourself.
It's so good. That's so good and so true because yeah, I mean, you could be doing something. I mean, even when we think about when we started our coaching business, how many people around us didn't believe in us?
Yeah.
We were so confident. We're like, no, we know exactly what we're going after. We know what we're creating. But how many people were around us that just either didn't understand what it was that we were doing and didn't actually think it was a good idea and didn't believe in us? Pretty much everybody. If we're being honest, pretty much almost every single person that surrounded us. We had very few cheerleaders and we had a lot of naysayers that were around us that were like, don't do it. Don't do
Yep.
it. And that was just them projecting their own fears onto us, right? Like that was like because they could never imagine stepping out of whatever they were doing in their day-to-day life to then step into this. But if we would have listened to that, it could have shaken our confidence completely. it could have completely broken whatever we were trying to create. It could have completely stopped us in our tracks. It could have derailed us 100% when we were starting.
That's why too, I always say to our students, like when I'm asking them about what their goals are, I'm like, your goals are for you. You don't need to share them with anybody else. You don't even need to share them with me because they're also very vulnerable, right? Your goals are very vulnerable. If you don't have a strong sense of self-confidence, they're like these shaky things. And as soon as somebody pokes, it's like it falls over. So it's
Mm.
like, that's where if you're building your self-confidence and if you're starting to build your confidence, especially in becoming a coach or expanding your business, it's really important that you just, again, are very careful who you share that with. Like who, like, because a lot of times, and again, like you said, our friends, it was our friends, our family members, people who love us and who have our best interests at heart. And they think they're helping us by being like, do you really
Don't
think
do
that's a good
it.
idea? Yeah, like, oh, like you have a good corporate job and like you really, do you really think you should be focusing on this? And we're like, yeah,
This is
what
what we're
like
going
this is what
to
we're doing.
Yeah, no doubts.
And
And
I also think though, one of the things that, really helped me was when I think back to it, was during that time, I didn't think too much about it. And I think that this is another thing that I was thinking about as
yeah,
I was preparing. I'm like, it's interesting because like as I'm older now, I tend to overthink things a lot more than I did when I was, younger. Right? Like or especially becoming a mom, I'm already like, oh my gosh, before I'd be like, yeah, let's get in a boat and go to Thailand and like, sail across the ocean in the middle of the night to get to the full moon party. And we're like, oh, that probably wasn't a good idea. Like now I'm like, oh my gosh, does this plane have, an exit strategy? Like, do they have like
I know.
how long has this plane been around for before I even get on it? Like it's interesting. Like the more you think about things and the more like information
Well,
you have,
the
the
more
less
evidence that you
likely,
find that goes
yeah,
against
the
what
less likely you are to kind of take that leap. And that's something that I think is really powerful. It's like if we can just tap into our own intuition, right? Like like our own natural just like I want this because like it's meant for me, right? Like this is something that could be for me. I want this. And I'm just going to try. Like I'm just going to go all in and I'm not going to make it mean anything if it doesn't go my way, right?
yeah.
Because it's like we overthink. It's like but I don't feel like I'm good enough and I'm full of self-doubt and I have all these things. And it's like, if we kind of just like jump in, like, we didn't have the knowledge of what we have now. And the thing I think too, it's really interesting as well, is because coaching is such a low entry, like a low risk entry business, which also helps me, like, when I talk to other people about their confidence too, I'm like, look, what is it that you're truly going to lose if you go after this? Right? Like you're not having to buy and invest in a restaurant that's like $800,000. You know what I mean? Like you're going into this, you're putting yourself out there. Someone says no to your coaching. But if you ask 10 people, someone will eventually, or 100 people, someone will eventually say yes. And you are going to get no's because that's totally normal, right? Like a lot of people are going to say no. It doesn't mean anything bad about you. It just means that maybe it's not the right time for them or they don't need your service or whatever it is. But like all you're really doing is investing your time, your heart, and in the worst case scenario, it doesn't work out. But you still have the knowledge and the skills to be able to do this in another way. Do you know what I mean? Like I always think of it that
Mhm.
way. Like my brain likes to go when it comes to like if I'm feeling like I'm not confident, I'm like, what's the worst case scenario if I did go after this? I
Oh my
might look
gosh.
stupid. Someone might
Yeah.
not like me. Someone might make a bad comment on social media. But what could happen if I went after this and it did work? And like that for me also helps to build my belief that it's possible.
That's such a good exercise though, doing that whole like, okay, so if it doesn't work out, then what? And then when you get that
Yeah.
answer, you just go, okay, and then what? And then what? And then you kind of like drill it down to like the lowest denominator possible of like, well, then I just don't have a business and I've spent 6 months building this thing. And it's like, okay, but if you didn't do it, then you would never even know. I mean, one of the rules that I've always lived by is the idea, and I know you do too, Laura, is that if you don't ask, the answer is always no,
Yeah.
right? And so it's one of the things, even in our business, that I've always lived by, where I'm like, we're just going to go and pitch the shopping channel. We don't know if they're going to say yes. We're just going to see what happens. And we show up and then they say yes. And then we're like, this is cool. And then it's like I pitch, and I know I've said this before on our podcast, and hopefully maybe one day they'll say yes, but I pitch Tony Robbins people all the time to have Tony Robbins on our podcast. They say no consistently across the board. I usually just get ignored a lot of times. Or when we were trying out for the Amazing Race TV show, we just kept getting no's over and over and over again. And
Yeah.
it's like, but we show up and we put ourselves out there because what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is they say no. The best thing that could happen is they say yes. But it's like if you don't ask, then the answer is always no. You'll never actually know what's possible for you. And I think that's a massive confidence thing, even if you're someone who is coaching, aspiring coaching, starting out, is just put it out there. Put it out there and have the confidence to show up and be like, I'm going to see what is possible. I'm truly going to just put this out. I'm going to put myself out there and I'm just going to see what is possible for me. And I think that that's such a massive thing. And I think, going back to the title of this podcast, I think that it's like that's kind of one of the superpowers, right? Is being able to step into something that is unknown and be like, I'm still going to just do it and see
Hmm.
what happens. And it helps you build your confidence because eventually you're going to get yeses. And then you're like, okay, this is exciting. This is moving me towards what I want. And then you feel less nervous about putting yourself out there and going after the thing. So I definitely like it's 100% our rule in our company. And it's definitely something I live by.
Well, and I think one of the things, like a lot of people always ask me, like, oh my gosh, how have you done all these things? And like I was saying, I'm like, I think because I just don't overthink them in the moment. Like I think like my again, like I just told you guys, my rule of thumb is like I always do allow my brain to go to worst case scenario, which for me has been a really good like barometer of like, do I want to do this? Like, okay, worst case scenario, I, for example, even like buy my house. Like what's the worst case scenario? I don't like it anymore, I sell it. You know what I mean? Or like, you know, financially something happens, I sell it. Like those kinds of things, like as I'm going into different situations, and it helps me just like also to put things into different perspective because my brain can likes to go like most people's brains into storyland. But it's like when we start to look at too many things at once, it really does shake your confidence because you're looking at like 85 different skills. So, like, for example, if someone's becoming a coach, right? Like, just say you're an aspiring coach, you've never coached before, you've never coached a client, this is your passion, you want to get into it. And you start thinking about, okay, well, I'm going to need to know how to coach a client. And I'm going to need to know how to build a program. And I'm going to need to know how to start a business. And I'm going to need to know social media. And I'm going to need to know, suddenly you're having like a mental breakdown because you're looking at 85 things at once, right? That you're like, I'm not confident in my skills in any of those areas because I've never even coached a client. Instead of looking at it like a ladder, right?
Mhm.
That's why the first step is just to learn how to coach, learn how to get your client a result, right?
Yeah.
If that's in weight loss, for example, you're going to learn how to get your client to a weight loss result. If it's in muscle building, you're going to learn how to help your clients build muscle. Like, I, this is the way that I tell all of our, like, so many people want to go already to the business place. And I'm like, okay, great to have the long term goal. You're like, this is the goal I'm going to, is I want to build a successful business. But where do I start? I start by learning how to get someone a result that they will pay me for, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where too, as a coach, so it's like, don't worry about all that other stuff yet. We can worry about that stuff once we get people to the result. Then when we get people to the result, the next thing we're going to work on then is our coaching skills and delivering that in a package that we can replicate. Then
Mhm.
once we do that, then we're going to work on selling. We're going to build up our confidence in selling. Like I didn't get into coaching thinking I was going to have to sell. I never even thought about that. The first thing I
Yeah.
just wanted to do was teach classes. Like I just want to teach classes, I want to coach clients, I wanted to help people. Like that was literally it. And I want to get paid
Yeah.
for doing something that I like to do. I never thought of it like I've got to learn how to sell, I've got to learn how to market, I've got to learn how to do all of
Accounting.
these things, right? Because it's too much for our brain to handle. So it's like first build your confidence getting the result, then build your confidence in your business, like in your abilities, then build your confidence in
Coaching.
your
Mhm.
business, right? Like, and then you'll, and along the way while you're doing that, you're building evidence, and then evidence will reinforce your belief in yourself that you can do this. And like that's why when you just focus on getting your clients a result at first too, that's creating the best evidence because every time they get a win, you're like, yes, like I'm on the right track. Yes, I'm on the right track, right? Like so
No,
I don't know, like
I
it's
I
just
agree with
that's
you.
kind of the way that I've done it. And that's why I think I have been confident because I don't like I've never been like, oh, I'm freaking out about, running a $20 million business when I haven't even had a client yet. Like even though, if that's the goal that I want to get to, it's like, but let's just focus first on like coaching a client.
Yeah. And then once you get that client, you're like, okay, now I've got to focus on getting my skills in place. And I think that's why this episode was so important because I mean, we do have, like I said, we have our coach week coming up January 28th to the 30th, a free ticket. But that coach week is really designed to basically start you with what are the skills that you need if you want to become a holistic nutrition weight loss coach and you want to help people reach a weight loss goal. What are those baseline skills that you need to be able to actually help your client go from point A to point B? What do you actually need to do differently? How do you need to operate? What do you need to offer to them? What does that look like? What does that journey look like? Because that's going to give you confidence to then step into the next stage. Right? So it's always about the skill first. It's always about the education. One of the things even in our certification programs with like our holistic nutrition weight loss coaching certification, it's like I have people that sometimes they sign up, our students sign up for our programs and they're like, "Oh, well, can I do the business sides first and can I do this together?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "No, you cannot." And it's
Nope.
not because we're trying to be mean. It's because we want you to learn this in a systematic way. You have to learn you have to learn what coaching is, how to coach, then you start learning how to build your business because it doesn't matter if you know how to build a crazy sales funnel and marketing materials and all this stuff if you don't know how to actually get someone results. You can have the most beautiful website on earth, but if you can't actually help someone get a result, it doesn't matter. None of it matters, and you'll never feel confident selling on that site. You'll just have it like in dormant stages at all times. You'll never actually go live with it because like think about how many people we know too that have like all these like back end stuff built out, but because they don't have the confidence from the front end of actually doing the thing, they've never actually launched. They've never
Well,
launched their business. They've never launched their program. They've never posted on social media. They've never done these things because they did it backwards. You have to
yeah.
do it, get the skills first.
Well, and it's just like, you know, we live now in a different world, right? Than when we first started our business. Like social
For
media
sure.
wasn't where it is now. So when we were comparing ourselves, we didn't have, you know what I mean, like this social media vanity profiles to look at and think, oh my gosh, how come she's succeeding and I'm not? Like, we didn't have that.
Excuse me.
We just had people who were like in our industry that were like, oh my gosh, how are they doing this? And like, we want to be like them, or like, we want to, grow as big as they are. Like, we didn't have a lot of examples, but we also weren't inundated with a lot of untruths, which that's the other thing too, right? If you're on social media all the time and you're looking at other coaches or you're looking at other people who have you started coaching at the same time as them and they're, quote unquote taking off, but you don't know if that's actually true. And like we've seen behind the scenes of a lot of businesses and there's a lot of lies that are told. There's a lot of, like
Smoke
people
and
will be like, "Oh
mirrors.
my
Yeah.
gosh, I made $100,000 in my business." That's the accumulation of 20 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Or
so
they're
you're
like,
looking, yeah,
or
like
they're
you're
like,
looking
yeah,
at
I
numbers.
made $10 million, and they're like, but then they spend like 9.8 million on ads to make that 10 million. Like,
Yeah, or they've spent 20 million to make 10 million. Like and they're in debt
correct.
and they're getting their houses repossessed. Like there's a lot of things and even just like new coaches like saying that they're doing things that they're not. And for me I just always think like energetically that will catch up and that's
Mhm.
why like when you focus on building getting clients results and just really focus on your clients at first you just become a really great coach. And when you're a really great coach it is so much easier to find clients, it's so much easier to grow your business, it's so much easier to do everything else, right? Which is why
Mhm.
we've been so successful. We've had a business for 16 years that has evolved and grown and changed because one of the things that we don't stop focusing on is how to be amazing coaches and how to like we grow our skill
Or
set to help
skills.
people get results. So it's like and deliver amazing programs, right? Like So that's why, you know, I feel confident now in my ability, and I can say 100% that like if FitChicks went away tomorrow, I could build a business within a month because I have the skill set and I built that evidence over time, right? But I don't need to look at somebody else and say like, oh, like you know what I mean? Like I'll like you look at other people, it's like I know that within me. So it's just like what because I focused on getting people results. So like when you do that, the rest of the stuff too will naturally fall in place if you pursue learning about it and taking action on it. So I just, yeah, I think confidence is such a fascinating thing. And it's something that, you know, when I started really actively focusing on building confidence, looking at where I wasn't confident, looking at things I was doing to self-sabotage because I didn't realize I was not confident. You know what I mean? Like it's, but the things that in Coach Week that we do talk about, I do in the workshop, we talk about what successful coaches think. And those four things that we talk about in that workshop are game changing. Like they were game changing for me. They literally have transformed my life, my revenue, like my our business, everything. And so I love doing that workshop with in Coach Week because I know just how impactful it is, just even those four things, those four shifts.
Yeah, so you don't want to miss it. So again, go to fitchicksacademy.com/coach week. That is where you can grab your free ticket. It's happening January 28th to the 30th. We will dive into all of this and so much more. You're going to leave those days with like your brain just being like, oh my gosh, how did I not know this stuff before? Because it's going to completely change the whole trajectory of your coaching, your skills, your abilities, your viewpoint on what is possible for you. Everything will shift. So make sure you check it out. Um, so thank you all so much for listening today. I hope this really helped you to just change your viewpoint of what confidence could really mean and where you might just have that place for growth or opportunity for change. So thanks again for listening. We will see you again next week on Fit Chicks Chat. And of course, we will see you live on Coach Week. So check it out again, fitchicksacademy.com/Coach Week. That is where you can grab your free ticket and we'll see you there. Bye, everyone.
Bye.